Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Yod Zayin. We mentioned yesterday a braita that said if a slave, Eved Ivri, runs away, then he eventually comes back, he has to fill in all the time that he missed. So that if he worked for 3 years and then ran away and he comes back, he still owes another 3 years. Even if the 6th year from when he started comes, he doesn't go free on the 6th year. He has to finish all the years of his work. Then we said, what about if he gets sick? So we said, no, if he gets sick, that does not apply. Bashevi'it yeseh, meaning that if he works for a certain amount of time and gets sick for a certain amount of time and the 7th year comes, he still goes free because it wasn't his fault. He was there and ready to work. The fact that he was sick is not his fault, and he goes free after 6 years, no matter what. We're going to analyze this further. Amar mod, yachol afilu halat tamud lomar ubashevi'it yeseh. Can it be even if he gets sick, then he still has to make up all of his lost time? No, the answer, because even though it says shesh shanim ya'avod, he has to work for 6 years. The pasuk also says he leaves on the 7th, so he has to work for 6 years total if he runs away. But if he was sick and the 6th and the 7th year comes, then he goes free. Now we ask, afilu chala kol shesh, what if he was sick the entire time? From day one, he got sick and he broke his leg or something and was not able to work all 6 years. Then what? Does he still go free at the 7th year? So from this dirasha, the first one, it would seem yes, because it just says across the board, in the 7th year you go free no matter what. As long as you were there and didn't run away and you were only sick, you go free. So that's the first baraita. Second baraita contradicts. V'hatanya hala shalosh ve'abad shalosh eno hayav lehashlim hala kol shesh hayav lehashlim. This one says that if he was sick for 3 years but worked for 3 years, then he does not have to make up. As long as he worked for half or more of his 6 years and he got sick the rest, he doesn't have to make it up. But if he was sick all 6 years, then he has to make it up. You never even started work, right? From day one, you didn't work any at all. You didn't start, so you got to do all 6 years when you get better. And so according to this, it sounds like if he was sick it says explicitly if he was sick all 6 years, then he has to make it up. From the first baraita, didn't mention anything about that. So from there, it sounds like if he was sick all 6 years, then he would not have to make it up. So which one is it? Amar Rav Sheshat be'oseh ma'aseh ma'achat. Rav Sheshat says the first baraita is talking about when he's doing some work. Okay, maybe he broke his leg permanently and he can't do any work and walk around in the field, but he can do some needlework. So needlework is still work, and therefore the fact that he's doing some work during those 6 years, that counts. And even if he gets better totally after and he could do farm work, he doesn't have to go back to do farm work. Whereas the second braita is talking about where he was doing zero work at all. He was not in a state that he could even do needlework. He was, mentally not there or paralyzed, and so he couldn't even do needlework. If he gets better, then he would have to make up if he didn't work for at least half of the time. Well, if he didn't work all 6 years. What about between 3 years and 6 years? That's what we're going to talk about next. Hagufa kashya. The two clauses of the second braita contradict each other. Amat chala shalosh ve'abad shalosh en hayav lehashlim. Ha'arba chayav lehashlim. On the one hand, you said that if he was sick for 3 and worked for 3, then he does not have to make it up. The implication is that will be the maximum of sick days that he can take. But if he was sick for 4 and only worked 2, then he does have to make it up, right? He was sick more than you worked, so that's not called that you made it up. That's not called that you worked all 6. We'll only consider it 6 if it's majority that you worked. Okay, you worked the majority of the time, and now the 6th year came, fine. You worked the majority, go free. But if it's less than the majority, then you have to make it up. That's what it would sound like from the first half. The second half says, if he was sick all 6, then he has to make it up. It sounds from there that only if he was sick the entire time, he has to make up all 6. But anything less than that, for example, 4, if he was sick for 4 years, then he would not have to make up those 4 years. So which one is it? Hachika hala arba nasa kimisha hala kol shesh vehayab lashrim. In fact, we're emphasizing the first derivation and explaining as that the rest of it is like a continuation. And the Mishnah means to say, listen, if it's 3 or more that you work, that's a majority, that's okay, you don't have to make it up. But if it's 4 years that you were sick, or more, then that's like you never started working at all. We go by the majority. Majority sick, that's considered like you were sick the whole time. And therefore, you have to go back and make up all that time that you were sick. Next, Tenor Banan, Kama Ma'anikim Lo. We know that a slave has to be given a severance package. How much? 3 opinions. Hamesh Shelaim Mikol Min Umin, Shen Hamesh Sere Shelaim Dibre Rabbi Meir. We're looking at this pasuk here in Sefer Devarim. It says, V'chi teshalachenu chofshi ma'imach, lo teshalachenu rekam. When you send them away, don't send them away empty-handed. Rekam, ha'anik ta'anik lo, misonecha, migornecha, umikbecha. We're going to learn things from every single one of these words. So hanik ta'anik, a double verb. Surely you shall give him from your flock, give him some sheep. Gornecha, from your threshing floor, that's some grain. Mikbecha, give him some wine. So mentions these 3 species. From what God has blessed you, you should give him, which sounds like there are other things that you can give him, and we're going to learn a few things from this phrase as well. Now, since it mentions 3 different types of things that you should give him, so Rabbi Meir says you should give him at least 5 selah worth of grain, 5 selah worth of flock, 5 selah worth of wine. That's opinion number 1. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shiloshim kishloshim shel eved. Rabbi Yehuda says total 30, meaning double what Rabbi Meir said. Rabbi Meir said 15. Rabbi Yehuda said total of whatever you're going to give him has to be at least 30. Where does he know that from? He's comparing the sending away of this Eved to the case of an ox that gores in Eved. That's Eved Kanaani, has to be, the owner gets paid 30 selah. So that's where he derives it from. The Gemara will explain why he uses that derivation. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Hamishim ka Hamishim Shabarachin. Rabbi Shimon says that the severance package has to be 50 selah, worth 50 selah altogether of whatever he gives. Because that's the maximum amount of evaluation. If a person says, I donate the value of myself or a certain person, then there's different amounts depending on the age and gender, but the maximum is 50, so he uses that, and you have to give that as a severance package. Let's analyze the 3 opinions. Amar Mor, Hamesh Mikol Min Umin, Shehem Hamesh Selaim Devre Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir Minyana Atal Shmoinan. Question about Rabbi Meir. You told me that you have to give 5 selah of every type, and there's 3 types. Equals 15. Rabbi Meir, are you trying to teach us math? Right? You don't think we know how to count? Is that what he's teaching us? Just say 5 selim of each mean. Why do you have to add the words, which is 15? Hakamash malan mibsarhu de la mibsar le mehai mina vibasar le mehad mina vetafe le mehad mina letlan ba. He comes to teach us that he may not give less than a total number of 15. Right? That's why he put in the total. That should be a total of 15. But if you want to give less grain and more wine, or more sheep and less grain, that's okay. You can give any ratios you want, as long as it adds up to 15. But the derivation of 15 is from the fact that it is 15 times 3. The sum is because you don't have to give exactly 5 of each. What's his source? Yalif rekam ibechor. Maladan hamesh selaim afkan hamesh selaim. Regarding pidyon haben, it says here, you have to redeem the firstborn of your sons, and don't come empty-handed. The word rekam comes regarding pidyon haben, and pidyon haben is 5 selaim, and so the word rekam here is, we make a gezerah shava. This is also 5 selaim, right? Do not send them without 5 selaim. Selaim of what? Of each of these, gornecha, sonecha, gornecha, and yikbecha. Ve'ema hamesh selaim mikulahu. Wait, question to the Rabbi Meir. If since it says rekam, that's 5 selah, so say 5 selah of these 3, total, 5 selah total, made up of these three types of produce? Why not say the 5 is total? Why say 5 of each? And the answer is, if it said the word rekam at the end of the second pasuk, then I would say, you're right. Give him these 3, and then rekam, that's 5 altogether. Hashta dichtiv rekam beresha, shadi rekam ason, rekam agoren, rekam ayeke. But since this is the word rekam before each of the 3 types of things, so we can apply it each one to rekam to each one. Rekam of sheep, that's 5. 5 of goren, 5 of yeke. That's how you get 15. Hold on, the word rekam also appears regarding the olah offering that you have to give when you come to Yerushalayim on the holiday. And how much is an olah offering? Well, it could be a lot, but it could be less. There's no fixed amount. So why don't we say there's no fixed amount and give even a little bit of severance pay to the slave? The rest of the pasuk says that which God blessed you. A blessing means a lot. Has to be more, and therefore has to be something nice and respectable. So that's why 15 selaim is respectable. If we say any amount, even a little bit, that's not respectable. Next, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Sheloshim kishloshim shel ayebed. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to give 30, like the ox that gores a eved kena'ani, which is 30. My tamad Rabbi Yehuda, what's his source? Yalif netina me'ayeved. It says the word sher titen lo, that's natan. And it says the same word regarding that slave who is gored. So ma shelahalan sheloshim afkan sheloshim, because we have a gezerah shava. Hold on, v'nelef netina me'arachin. If you're focusing on the word natan, well, the word natan also appears regarding arachin, ma'alan chamishin afkam chamishim, and the highest valuation of that for an adult male is 50, so say 50. Wanted to make a gezerah shava over there. And the answer is 2 answers. Hadad tafasta merubeh, lo tafasta mu'at tafasta. Whenever you have to decide between, there's 2 options, and should we assume the Torah means the bigger option or the smaller option? So there's a rule. If you grab onto too much, you won't get anything. If you grab onto a little, then at least you'll hold on to it. Kind of like saying a bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush. The big one you don't have. It's also kind of an application of who said I should give you more? Look, I have 2 gezerot shavot. One says 50, one says 30. We can only assume the lesser amount, the 30, that he has to pay that, unless we have any other indication that it should be the 50. So we're on surer ground if we grab on, at least have that 30. Second of all, ve'od ebed me'ayebed hava le'melaf. Also, we want to compare cases that are similar. Gezerah shava is not just an automatic thing that you see the same word in 2 places. You're supposed to look at the context. It's actually supposed to make sense. And therefore, we should learn the case of how much you give and as a severance package to an Eved Ivri from another case that it's true, it's an Eved Kana'ani who gets gored, but still they're both types of Avadim, and so that makes more sense than learning it from Arachin of a free person, which is Arachin of any person, which is not related to Avadim specifically. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Hamishim ka Hamishim Shabarachin, my Ta'amed Rabbi Shimon. How come Rabbi Shimon gives the biggest amount of severance to an Eved Ivri of 50? Gaman netina me'arachin, ma'alalan chamishin afkan chamishim. So, as we just said, the gezerah shava is netina, and he says, I'm going to do the 51. Wait, in Arachin, there's a whole list of different valuations, and the smallest of them, which is for a baby girl, is only 3 selah. Too bad for her. But that's the official valuation in the Torah. It gives these different gradations. Why are you assuming the most? And the answer is, Torah says you should share with the slave that's going free from what God blessed you. Blessing means a lot, so you should take the maximum. Wait a second, why doesn't Rabbi Shimon agree with Rabbi Yehuda and do a gezerah shavav netina with the 30 of an ox that gores a slave? And furthermore, that makes sense, you should do that, as Rabbi Yehuda himself defended, because you should always pick the lesser amount when you have two options. At least you definitely grasp that. And you should compare apples to apples. One case of Ayvid from another case of Ayvid. That's what Rabbi Yehuda said. That's why he preferred that Gezra Shava of 30. What is Rabbi Shimon going to say? Rabbi Shimon, Micha Gama. Rabbi Shimon says the word umach. If your brother becomes poor, right, then this is what you should do. It says the word umach in the context of valuations, arachim, and it says it also in the context of an Ayvid Ivri, and that's why we should compare those two together that mention poverty, rather than that's a stronger similarity rather than an ox that gores in Ayvid Kana'ani, which is according to Rabbi Shimon a different category altogether. Now, back to the Pesukim. Why does it need to mention these three different types of food items? Because for the Meir, because you have to give 5 of each, and that's how he gets his total of 15. Even if you don't give 5 of each, but 4 of one and 6 of the other, that's still okay. But you need all three categories to teach me to get to 15. But according to the other two opinions, they make a gezerah shava netina either to 30 or to 50, but they don't learn it from the three categories. So what do they do with it? The following Baraita explains, if I only had the words son, Goren, and Yekeb, I would think the owner can only give a severance package from those items. Even if he has a lot of other types of things, he has gold, he has cars, no, he can't give anything else. It has to be only sheep, grain, and wine. What about any other items? Oh, the rest of the pasuk says whatever God blesses you with, that's an inclusive term. So that means, other things also, not only those three, other categories. Wait, if so, if you're going to end up saying anything's okay, then why mention the three specific things? Oh, we're going to make a compromise. So it has to be similar to those. It doesn't have to be those three things, but it has to be anything that's similar in the sense that it has blessing. Anything that grows and multiplies. So animals and produce, these are things that grow and multiply. That's good. But other things, no. What's excluded by this? Yasu kesafim Rabbi Shimon. According to Rabbi Shimon, money is not good. Even if you have lots of gold, that's not what you can give him, because gold does not grow, not on its own at least. Maybe if you invested in something, which we'll get to in a second, but not money. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer Yasu Peradot. He says we exclude mules, although sheep you can use because they have children and they grow in that way. But if it's a sterile animal, then it will not grow. Even though it's an animal, still you cannot use it. So they apply the limitation in different ways. But Rabbi Shimon Peradot Mishabehan Begufayhu. Rabbi Shimon, who said it excludes money, he thinks mules are okay, even though they don't grow by having children, but they grow in their own bodies. You feed them more, then they get bigger. So that's and stronger. So that's good. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov kesafim aved behu iska. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, no, only mules are excluded. Money is fine. You can pay with money. Why? Because you can conduct business with it. You have gold, you can invest it. The amount can increase. And so therefore, money does increase, mules do not. All right, good. Usericha. Now, I need to say all three of these. Right, so the fact that now I understand why I need three categories and Asher Barachecha to teach me that Asher Barachecha would include everything, but these three categories are things that grow. Now we're asking, well, why do I need all three examples of something that grows? Right? Why not just one or two of such examples? If it had only sheep, I would think, well, it has to be something that's a live animal. But vegetation was not not quite alive like an animal, and therefore I would say no. So I need an example of an animal and an example of vegetation. That's why it says threshing floor. If it's the other way around, only vegetation, it didn't say animals, I would think only vegetation is allowed to give him, but not animals, so therefore it has to be sheep. That's why it has those two. Fine. Why do I need the wine? Wine, grapes? Okay, I know that's a type of vegetation already. That word, that's the extra one that will exclude something. What is was it excluding? According to one master, to be Shimon, that's excluding money that doesn't grow on its own, and according to the Eliezer, it's excluding mules that don't have children. So that's why I need the extra example, and that would answer the question. Not for the Bimei. No, we know why he needs all three, but for the other two opinions that explain why they need to mention all three. תנו רבנן, אשר ברכך אדוני אלוהיך, יכול נתברך בית בגללו מעניקים לו, לא נתברך בית בגללו, אין מעניקים לו. If from this phrase, what the give to the slave from what God has blessed you, I might have thought only if the house is blessed because of the slave. In other words, if from the time that the slave came into the house until 6 years later, whenever he goes free, that leaves the house, the property increased significantly. Oh, see, this slave brought blessing to my house. Then you get a severance package. But let's say not. Let's say if they had bad crops all those years and the property went down, so then no severance package, like a bonus, right? If the business does well, you get a bonus. If the business doesn't do well, sorry, you didn't get a bonus. I might have thought that. That's why I have a double verb. Surely you shall give him, meaning no matter what. He did his work. It's not his problem that your property did or didn't do well. Therefore it says, in accordance with as Hashem blessed you, that the amount you give is in accordance with the blessing. If he did a lot for you and everything increased very much, then give him a bigger bonus. If not, then you can give him the minimum bonus. But this is definitely a bonus no matter what. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah omer, דברים ככתבן, נתברך בית בגללו מעניקים לו, לא נתברך בית בגללו אין מעניקים לו. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, I agree with the Havamina, as it says, read it literally. You should give him a severance according to that which God has blessed you. That means only if the property increased during the tenure of the slave, then you give him a bonus, but if not, then you do not give him anything at all. If so, why does it have the double language? And because we just said here, the double language teaches me that you have to give him something no matter what. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah can say, the Torah speaks in human language, and in normal human language, sometimes you say a double verb just for emphasis, but it's not necessarily there to teach you any new halacha. We now continue with a new beraita, Tenu Rabbanan. Oved ivri obed et haben, ve'eno obed et habat. If you have a male Hebrew servant who serves part of his time under the owner, and then the owner dies, then he has to continue serving under the son. He worked for 3 years, let's say, and then the master dies, and let's say there is a son, a living son, who inherits the father and inherits this Eved Ivri. He has to finish off his term with his son as the new owner. However, let's say there are no sons and the father dies and there's only a daughter, and the daughter inherits the slave. Not so, then the Eved Ivri goes free. The Eved Ivri is not given over to the daughter to finish his term. This is not true for an Ama Ivriya, female slave who starts off with one person, and then that owner dies, then she goes free no matter what. Whether there are sons who inherit or daughters who inherit, she does not have to finish off her term. Similarly, if you have an Eved Ivri who wants to continue his service and renews by having his ear pierced, and then that owner dies. Or if a Hebrew is sold to a non-Jew as a slave, and the owner dies, so then not the son and not the daughter, they do not inherit the slave. He goes free. That's the Braita. We'll analyze each section. How do you know a son can inherit an Eved Ivri, but not a daughter? It says, the Hebrew slave will serve you for 6 years. So we learn you and not an heir. When we say yoresh, we're talking about a different heir other than the son. A son has a special status. A different heir might be, let's say, if there's no son, a daughter, a brother, an uncle, right? Because there's a certain order. So abadecha, he serves you, but not a different heir. Wait a second. If this is an exclusionary word, he serves you only, maybe it means he serves you only and not even a son. Maybe nobody inherits him at all. Kishu omer, shesh shanim ya'avod, hare leben amor. A different pasuk in Shemot says that this Hebrew slave will serve for 6 years. It doesn't say ya'avadecha, it just says ya'avod, which is an inclusionary term, so that has to be including someone, and that would be the son. Therefore, if the owner dies in the middle of the service of the Eved Ivri, if he has a son who inherits, then he continues to work. If not, and the inheritance goes to someone else, then the Eved goes free. Now, what am I going to do with the pasuk v'abadecha? So obviously, v'abadecha sheshanim, that it will serve you, means he serves you only and not an heir other than the son. That's the derivation. Now we ask about this derivation. Had you decide that you should include the son but exclude a brother, you could say the other way around. I know I have two pesukim. Avadecha is excluding something. Ya'avod is including someone. So why not say Avadecha will serve you and not the son? Whereas Sheshanim Ya'avod, he will continue to serve his sixth sentence no matter what. That's other heirs, like a brother. And so you could come to the opposite conclusion. The answer to that is Marbe ani etaben sheken kam tahat the son is preferable. If anyone is going to continue the father and continue to be the owner, it's going to be the son, because in two other laws, for specifically the li'ada, if there's a minor girl who's sold by the father to the master, then the master can marry her when she becomes an adult, or the son also can. Either the father or the son can do this yi'ud marriage. This is a marriage that you don't have to give any more money because the original sale price covers the Kiddushin that either the father or the son will do. So there you see that the father and son are tightly connected. Also, for an ancestral field, if someone consecrates an ancestral field, and then the Kohanim go and sell it to a foreigner, when the Jubilee comes, the Kohanim take it back. It kind of becomes like their ancestral land. However, if the person sells his ancestral field, and he himself or his son redeem it, then they get it back and they keep it. The son or the father or the son keep it. It does not go back to the Kohanim. So in that case also, a father and a son have the same law. So for this also, this law of inheritance, it makes sense that the son should continue to be the master of the Eved Ivri if he didn't finish his term, and the foreigner does not. Now we ask, wait a second, a brother has a pretty close relationship because only a brother does yibum for a deceased brother, not a son. So maybe the Eved Ivri also should go to a brother and not a son. And we answer, Kilum yesh yibum ela makom she'en ben, hayesh ben en yibum. No, that's not a good example, because you only apply yibum when there is no son. There's no son anyway. So then, okay, the brother, he's the one that does it. That's why the brother gets that right. If there is a son, then the brother doesn't do yibum. And yibum also involves inheritance, because if you do yibum, the inheritance goes to the brother. If there's a son alive, the inheritance goes to the son and not the brother. So that's not a good example. You see that for all matters, the son is closer than a brother. Now you're telling me, wait a second, let's say I didn't have this refutation here that we just mentioned. Then otherwise you would say, yeah, maybe you should go to the brother. But why would you even think that? Halav hachi ach adif, v'typically the hachaterte v'hachachada. Regarding a son, there are two laws that are similar, yi'ud and the ancestral land. Regarding a brother, there's only one law that's similar, that of yibum. So no matter what, the son should win over the brother, even if you don't refute the Yibum law? Answer to that is Sedeh Huzana me Mahai Pirchahu Dekan Nafka Le'letana Kilum Yesh Yibum El Makom She'en Ben. The truth is, if you look back in Masechet Arachin at the derivation, how do we even know that the law of ancestral land, that a person keeps it, applies also to the son? We only figured maybe that applies to the brother. Well, the only reason why we know over there that it applies to the son and not the brother is because we applied this refutation. So really, the law of Arachin, of Sedeh Achuzah, the law of Sedeh Achuzah, really we would fall without that refutation, so it's dependent on that refutation. So therefore, if you do not apply the refutation to the law of Yibum, then you would not be able to apply it to derive Sedeh Achuzah, so that would also fall away. So if you don't apply the refutation, then you'll end up having 1 against 1. Yi'ud says that the son is stronger. Yibum says that the brother is stronger. 1 against 1, we wouldn't know what to do. If you apply the refutation over here, then the brother is out and the Sedeh Achuzah is in, and so then that's a definite 2-0 win. All right, Amah Ivriya ena ovedet lo et haben velo et habat. The next phrase in the Baraita said that, and the Ma'ivriya does not get passed down to anybody. If she is supposed to be a slave for 6 years, and the owner dies any time in the middle, she goes free. What's the source? Amar Rabbi Pada Amar Kera. Va'af lamatecha ta'aseh ken. Hikisha katub lenirsa. Ma nisa eno obed lo taben velo tabat. Af Ma'ivriya ena obedet lo taben velo et tabat. So look at this pasuk here. It says, if a person, if a Eved says, I like my master and I don't want to leave, so you take the all and olam. And then the pasuk says, now a simple reading of this pasuk would sound like a woman also can choose to renew her slaveship and continue and get her ear pierced. But the halacha is not going to be so. We're going to apply this pasuk to the next one, to make sure that you give severance. Severance applies to a man and to a woman. So we're going to kind of put the olam period, and then also for an amah you do the following. Okay, but nevertheless, you see that it does, in one pasuk, compare male and female avadim. What's the purpose of this comparison? What can we learn? Well, we can learn that just like a nirsa does not get passed on to any heirs, so too an amah ivriya does not get passed on to any heirs. That's what we learn from this. Now we ask, hold on, are you going to compare this amavriya to the law before regarding nirsa to teach me that neither of them gets passed on to an heir? But didn't we already use this phrase for the halacha that both a man and a woman slave get a severance gift? Now, within that braita, it wonders, wait, you're going to take this phrase and apply it to the next pasuk to teach me something about severance, that a man and woman both get severance. Maybe the law is like the pashat of the pasuk is teaching me that a female can get the ears pierced just like a male and continue to renew his slavery. Not here in Devarim, but rather in Shemot, it says if a Eved, meaning a male, says I like my master and I want to stay, then you pierce his ear. That means Eved, only male and not a female. So we know the law of Ritziah is already accounted for, so that's done. So therefore, what's the comparison between the female and the male? Oh, it's what the next pasuk says, that you have to give them both a severance. אם כן, נכתוב קרא למתך כן, מה תעשה? שמטמינה תרתה. So all that was the question. You're telling me here that how do I know an amavriya does not go to heirs? Because it's compared in the pasuk to a male, a nirsa, who does not go to heirs. Fine, you're using the comparison for that, but we already used the comparison to teach me that both a male and a female get severance. So we say, no, if it was only teaching about severance, it could have just written in a shorter form, la matecha ken. Why does it say, af la matecha ta'aseh ken? The extra word ta'aseh means we could learn two comparisons that in a male and female slave are the same, both in the sense that they both get gifts when they at the end of their service, and also that a nirsa and a female servant do not go to inheritors. But there is a difference between them, which is that only a male can be nirsa and a female cannot become nirsa. The last item on the list in the Baraita is Hanirsa v'hanimkar le'nochri eno oved lo et haben ve'lo et habat, a slave who had his ear pierced, and then the owner dies, or if he is a Jew, is sold to a non-Jew and the owner dies, then the heirs do not inherit the slave, not a son and not a daughter. What's the source? Nirsa dichti v'rasa donavet ozno b'marseya v'abado le'olam ve'lo et haben ve'lo et habat. Regarding in Nirsa, it says, once you pierce his ear, he will be his slave forever, avado. But that means only that master, but not the son and not the daughter. Nimkar le'nochri minayin. What about someone sold to a non-Jew? Amar Chizkiah amar kera v'chishab im konehu ve'lo im yorshe konehu. Regarding a Jew sold to a non-Jew, it says that the relatives or he himself can redeem him, and they have to make a calculation according to the purchaser. It means only with the purchaser and not with the heirs to the purchaser. Since this redemption law is mentioned only regarding him and not his heirs, it means that he can only be owned by him and not his heirs, because otherwise you would say, what, the heirs can own him, but he can't be redeemed? No, he can be redeemed anytime, and that is only with the owner. Therefore, if the owner dies, the slave goes free. Amar Rava, Devar Torah nochri yoresh et abiv shenemar v'chishav im konehu v'lo im yorshe konehu michlal de'itle yorshim. Since we mentioned this pasuk, we're going to use it for yet another law. Rava says, according to Torah law, a non-Jew does have inheritance from his father, right? You have a non-Jewish father, gives birth to with a non-Jewish mother, and give birth to a non-Jewish child. And let's say they live under Torah law. You live in the land of Israel, and it's halachic, and the rabbis are governing, and then the father dies. What is the law? Where does his inheritance go? According to the Torah, there is inheritance for non-Jews. How do you know? Because here is an example of a non-Jew that owns a Jewish slave, and it says that he can be redeemed but from that owner, but not from the heirs. So that means, this is a special case here, that the slave is not inherited to the children of a non-Jew. But that would mean, in general, there is inheritance, and for all the other things, the land and the animals and everything else, does get legally inherited by Torah law by the heirs of the non-Jew when he dies. Get et hanochri eno midivrei Torah ela midivrei sofrim. What if you have a convert who's a child of a non-Jew? Well, kind of by definition. But the point is that the father is not Jewish and the mother is not Jewish. They give birth to a non-Jewish child. That child then converts to Judaism, and then the father dies. The father owned property. Where should the property go? According to Torah law, once someone converts, they become a new person. It's like they're reborn. And therefore, the biological ties, while still it's a biological father, but is no longer the legal father. And since his biological father is not his legal father, when his biological father dies, the son does not inherit according to Torah law. However, the rabbis made a decree that the son should inherit. We'll see why. Ditanan, ger v'nochri sheyashu avihem nochri, ger yachol lomad nochri tol ata avodah zara v'ani ma'ot, tol ata yain nesach v'ani perot, mishabal l'shut ger asur. We can tell this from a Mishnah in Masechet Demai that talk about a non-Jewish father who gives birth to two kids, let's say two sons. One of them converts to Judaism, one does not. So they have a convert who's Jewish and a non-Jew, and they inherit their father who is not Jewish. And let's say mixed into the inheritance are various things like idolatry that are not allowed. Not only is it not allowed to use, you're not allowed to benefit from it. Even though you can't benefit from it, the Jewish son who converted can tell the non-Jewish son, listen, why don't you take the idolatry and I'll take the money instead. They're the same value. We're both getting equal share. But you just take those idols because I don't want them. That's okay. Also, he says you take the yayin nesech and I'll take the fruit, which is permitted. That's also okay. Now, the reason why it's okay, even though The Jewish kid the convert kid is indirectly benefiting from it, right? By giving away, allowing the other guy to get the idolatry, he's getting now more money and more fruit. Now, so why should that be permitted? You see, it's only permitted because on the Deoraita level, there is no inheritance at all, as we're going to explain in a second. Now, once it comes into their property, in other words, if they take all the stuff and they split it, and some idolatry goes here and some idolatry goes there, then the Jewish guy already owns it. Then he can't swap it out, because once he owns it, he can't get benefit from it, and he can't trade it, the idolatry, for something else. So we'll analyze if inheritance to a convert was a deoraita law, then even if it didn't come into his hands, but still in the property of the estate, when he makes this deal and says, I'll take the money, you take the idolatry, then he's still benefiting from that idolatry, and therefore it would still be prohibited. So the only reason why the Mishnah says it's permitted is because on a Deoraita level, there is no inheritance at all. So really he's not getting anything at all. And now on the Drabanan level, we say, okay, you know what, we'll give you something. Or what do you want? Well, you know what, give me the money and not the idolatry. So he's never really had a share in the idolatry to begin with. Good. Rather, the whole law of inheritance for a convert from his non-Jewish father is only midrabanan. What's the reason the rabbis made such a decree? Because they were afraid that he would go back to his wayward path and become an idolater again. Let's say he converted. He did it, L'shem Shamayim, he really likes Judaism, very nice. But now his father died, and father had $1 million. And now we tell him, oh, listen, since you converted, sorry, you're no longer, it's not longer your legal father. You get nothing. So then he might say, you know what, forget about this Judaism. I'm going to go back to idolatry so I can get my $500,000. It's a big test. It's too much for most people to handle. Therefore, we say, listen, even though on the Doraita level, it's not your legal father and you don't get anything, nevertheless, we want to make sure that you stay close, stay with your Judaism, and therefore the rabbis say, well, we'll give you a half, or whatever, we'll give you the inheritance, whatever it is. I said half, assuming there's another brother. It could be the whole thing if he's the only child. All right, Tanya Nameh Hachi, and there's a baraita that supports the interpretation that we just said. When is the convert allowed to make a deal and say, you keep the idolatry and I'll keep the money? Only when he inherited. Before they split the inheritance, but if they have a partnership in the inheritance, it's not allowed. In other words, there's 2 stages or 3 stages. When the father dies, it's still in the kind of like a corporation, right? In the estate. Now the brothers can come and say, listen, we're going to have shared ownership. So it leaves the estate, and now it's like any shared property of any type in which they have ownership. They have equal ownership over that. If they did that, then they would not be able to split it. Why? Because the difference is it's inheritance, so it's still in the hands of inheritance, and in the estate, while still in the estate, the convert brother doesn't own anything at all, because it's on the Doraita level, he does not inherit. Once they decide, you know what, we're going to make a partnership, and then they own both. They own each their half. If he says, "You keep the idolatry, I'll keep the money," then he's benefiting indirectly. He's benefiting from the idolatry, and that would be prohibited. The point is that it's not permitted in the first case because it's only indirect benefit. That's not the reason, because in the case of partnership also there's only indirect benefit. Rather, the reason why it's allowed is because at the time of inheritance there is no Doraita law, it's only the Rabbanan. But once it goes into their hands, either as a partnership or they actually split it and he takes it, then it will be prohibited to benefit even indirectly from the idolatry. Now, next case, Nochri et hager veger et hager eno lo midivrei Torah velo midivrei sofrim. if you have a non-Jew that gives birth to a non-Jew, but then the father converts right after that non-Jewish child was born, and then that father should die. So then you would have a case of a non-Jew who is inheriting from a convert. But the thing is that once that convert converts, they become like a new being, and therefore their biological son is not their legal son. Or a case where, again, the non-Jew gives birth to a non-Jew, and then they both convert, both the father and the child convert. Let's say right now, after the father is born. The Gemara will deal with what is the case. And in these two cases, and there is no law of inheritance, not from Doraita and not even Midrabanan. Because here there's no reason to say, well, maybe he'll go back to his original ways. No, the son here is a Nochri. So if anything, he'll convert to, but that won't help either. The point is that once a father is not Jewish, but then converts, so his children are no longer his biological children. We're not worried that the father is now going to go back to his original ways. The father has died at this point. Therefore, there's no reason to make a gezerah. So there is no law of inheritance at all if the father had converted to Judaism, and even if the son converted to Judaism, and they're both Jewish, but these are separate conversions, and each one makes that father and the son into new beings that are not legally related. Ditnan, lava ma'ot min hager shintgairu banav imo lo yachzir lebanav v'mechzir en ruach hachamim nocha hemen. Or Mishnah Shvi'i teaches that if someone borrowed money from the father who is a convert, even though his sons also converted, but they converted, even if they converted at the same time, the point is they all converted after they were born. After the kids were born, then the father dies. So now this guy owes money to the father. He should not return it to the son. And if he does, the rabbis are not pleased with him. The reason is because even though biologically they are father and son, legally they are not, and there is no inheritance, not from the Torah and not B'Drabanan. Therefore, certainly there's no obligation to return it to the son, and the rabbis actually don't even want someone to do that, because by doing that, it's indicating, I think that there is inheritance. I think that they are legally related. It's kind of ignoring the halacha, and therefore the rabbis say, listen, that's it. You don't have to, and you should not return it. Now we ask, V'ha Tanya, Ruach Hachamim Nochamen. There's another version that says the rabbis were pleased with it. Legally you don't have to because no inheritance. Nevertheless, you borrowed money, and now the son, he doesn't legally and have to legally inherit. Nevertheless, it's proper to return it to the son. So what about that? The answer is they're talking about different circumstances. When the conception and the birth of the son was not in sanctity, meaning the child was born and only afterwards the mother converted, so then that child is born not Jewish totally, and the fact that it converts later is not going to help and does not inherit at all. And that's the first baraita that says the rabbi said, do not return it to that child. Whereas the second baraita is talking about a case where the child was conceived when the mother was not Jewish, but then was born when the mother was Jewish. In other words, the mother converted sometime during the 9 months of her pregnancy. So since the conception was not when she was Jewish, and therefore the child is not fully Jewish, and that's why biblically and rabbinically there is no law of inheritance. When that child, after the child is born and goes through its own conversion, then it will be fully Jewish, but still a renewed person, not related to the mother and not to the father. However, since the mother did convert during pregnancy, and it was born therefore in sanctity, that is somewhat valuable, and that's sufficient to make it different from the previous case. And the rabbis say, listen, that in this case you should return the item to the child, even though legally there is no obligation because the conception was not Jewish, and so therefore the child is not fully Jewish. Nevertheless, the birth being when the mother was Jewish makes it similar enough that it's appropriate to return the lost item. Return the loan. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.